Okay, real fast, just to close it out, know the easy stuff. You know how I just said a few of these things back a while ago? There's the triangle with the factoids, and then the understanding, and then analysis, and then the creation. You don't really need to worry about the factoids. Yeah, I'm kind of kidding. You actually do kind of need to worry about the factoids. The reason you need to worry about the factoids is not because you're going to get asked that question, but because you want to feel comfortable that you know what's going on, right? So know the easy ones. You don't have to memorize everything. There's a bunch of stuff that's easy. So you should know how big parking is, right? Parking is an easy one. So you get a question about parking, and a parking space typically is about 9 feet by 19 feet, right? Now maybe it's 8'6", maybe it's 8 foot, maybe it's 18 foot, but it essentially is going to be about that. And you can start thinking about it. If you start including the aisleway, well, it's going to be about 350, maybe 300 to 350 square feet per parking space. So if somebody says on a question, okay, you've got 50 parking spaces, you can figure out how big it is pretty damn fast. And you can figure out, does it fit on the site or not, right? Now you can go through and look up in the zoning code and find where it says how big the parking space is, or you can just know that, right? You can bring that kind of information to it. And just find those sort of easy vocabulary ways. Let me give you one other example and then we'll call it. This is sort of an obtuse one. I use this one a lot because I think it's kind of interesting and helpful to kind of think about. When you start thinking about vocabulary, you start getting lost in you're just memorizing the things. But what you want to memorize is what it means, not just the word, but what it's actually telling you. So this is, imagine you have two different logs, and one you're cutting up as a quarter sawn, and one you're cutting up plain sawn. Hope I spelled that right. And you can see here they are different. This would be the quarter sawn, and you sort of divide it up into quarters, and then I'm getting these things parallel to the grain as they're going by, right? So if I looked at that board in section, the grain would be something kind of like that. Whereas if you see these ones, which are plain sawn, if I take a look at that in section, it's probably going to look something like this. Well, that's very different. What would be the advantage of the plain sawn? Well, the advantage of the plain sawn is I'm going to get more wood out of it. In this version, I get all these little corners and bits that I don't get, right? So those become sawdust or particle board or something else. The advantage of the plain sawn is I get a lot of that material put into wood. But the advantage of the quarter sawn is when that material starts to flex and to expand and contract, which all wood will, it's going to do it really evenly. And my pattern is going to look on the face of that wood kind of like straight lines. It won't be perfectly straight line, but you get the idea. And then on the plain sawn, it's probably going to look like that. It's going to have cathedraling, that's what it's referred to as. So this one's going to start to bend and flip in ways that this one just won't do, because this one's going to stay consistent even if it gets smaller. This one, it's going to tighten up in certain ways, and those lines are going to want to straighten out, and so it's going to start to have problems. So when you start looking at these kinds of, this is just an example, I'm just using this as an example. You start looking at these vocabulary elements, right? It's not that you want to just memorize what quarter sawn is. It's that you want to start to think about, what does it mean to me? When would I choose one? How does it work? Why do people care, right? We could have the same conversation about any number of those sort of fairly simple vocabulary words. When you see them, you see something you're not 100% sure about, just look into it. But try to not get caught up in the way that it's being described. Think about how you would think about it, how you would use that information.